Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, Angela Merkel, the former Chancellor of Germany, she ruled the country for, I think, 17 years, or 16 or 17
Well,
years.
I think longest serving.
Yeah, exactly. She was 82. Yeah, I think so. I think she outdid Helmut Kohl. Helmut Kohl was
Yeah.
also 16 years. Did that. So, um, I think longest, I guess, since Bismarck. Um, anyway, she has written her memoirs, and they've some excerpts have appeared in various media outlets, and she's been doing interviews. And of course, it's a very tricky situation for her because this war in Ukraine is it always goes back to her, because she was really there when the early decisions that proved to be so fateful were made. So she first of all undertook those gas pipeline deals, starting with Nord Stream 1 and then with Nord Stream 2. She was there at the time of the coup at Maidan, when she, again, promised to respect the deal that was struck between Yanukovych and the opposition. Of course, then she withdrew her, essentially her guarantee for the deal. And then, of course, she was also a guarantor of the Minsk agreements, and we know what happened there. Um, and then, of course, pride of place goes to what happened in Bucharest in 2008 when the Bush administration pushed for Ukraine and Georgian membership of NATO, and Merkel sort of pushed back and sort of didn't, managing to upset everybody in the process.
The history of her entire chancellorship.
Exactly. So she's written this book, basically a kind of apologia for the decision, because now her reputation has come under attack because she's getting blamed for what's happened in Ukraine. And so just want to show you, first of all, a few excerpts from the memoirs. We haven't had a chance yet to read the memoirs. It's a 700-page tome. And then she gave an interview to Der Spiegel magazine. So if we, this is so this is from Deutsche Welle. And he said Merkel recalls childhood, Putin and Trump in new memoir. And the media reports are actually not that interesting because they focus on her views on Trump, which doesn't have anything interesting to say there, other than that they really didn't hit it off. She and Trump really didn't like each other. And so here we have in an excerpt on meeting Putin at the 2007 Munich Security Conference, Merkel says Putin presented himself as someone who was always on his guard, not to be trifled with, and always ready to dish it out. She confirms a famous story that
But is
Putin.
that a compliment or a criticism?
Well, that's a very interesting. I was thinking that myself because anyone who's a kind of leader, leader of a state or prime minister, they're always very wary. I mean, you're always on your guard. You don't want to say anything that's going to be used against you. Anyway, she confirms a famous story that Putin brought his large Labrador to a private meeting with her. It is well known that an earlier incident left Merkel with a phobia of dogs, but Putin has denied doing it on purpose to intimidate her. I've never understood this story because why? I mean, first of all, I don't know why Putin would do this. What if let's say Putin knew that she had a phobia of dogs, what would he hope to achieve by bringing this black Labrador to a meeting with Merkel? And then in the other case, is why would he know that she had a phobia. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know why a Russian president would know that a German chancellor has a phobia about dogs.
Well, did she have a phobia of large Labradors? Because anyone that knows, been around a Labrador, they are the most kind,
Right,
quiet,
right,
affectionate dogs. I mean, they
right.
are big, but I mean, they're gentle
They're
giants.
gentle. That's
Why
exactly what I was thinking. Labradors are
That's why
extremely gentle.
so many young families have Labradors with children because
Right,
the Labrador is so protective and so loving of
right.
children, and they
Yes,
put up a lot of stuff with kids
right,
grabbing them and pulling their hair.
right.
Really hard to get a Labrador worked up. Okay.
Exactly. That's it. They're very beautiful, but they're very gentle. They're very so. I mean, if you really wanted to intimidate her, then bring a Doberman. That's going to get a rise out of her. But I don't know. You wouldn't automatically think, oh, I'm going to intimidate her by bringing in a Labrador. I mean, who's intimidated by a
Yeah, but
Labrador?
see, George, but do you see how disingenuous this whole story is? Is that every great leader has dogs, right?
Mhm.
Okay. You know, and particularly, I mean, there have been books written about presidents and their dogs in the United States. Okay. So if Putin has a dog, well, it must be an evil dog. I mean, this is just this kind of stupid binary
Right.
thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Um, And then she also says he regularly arrived late for the purpose of making people wait.
He did that to everyone. He does it to everyone, even the Pope.
Yes. You could find all this childish, reprehensible, you could shake your head at it, but that didn't make Russia any less important on the world stage, the ex-chancellor says. Well, I mean, yeah. She goes on to describe him as singularly preoccupied with the United States, as if longing for the days of the Cold War. That doesn't seem like a very astute observation. I don't think he
Well,
was
no,
long.
I mean, let's accept that's true, but the United States gave Putin a lot to think about.
Well, that's right. And again, but the point about saying it's longing, I just don't see that he was ever longing for that. And then Merkel also shed some light on her infamous first meeting with Donald Trump in 2017. An incident went viral on social media in which Merkel appeared to ask Trump to shake hands for a photo, and he ignored her. And then she writes that he appeared not to understand her request, and then pelted her with questions about growing up under a dictatorship. These are so strangely trivial episodes that she's focusing on. I don't even understand this whole thing about he didn't want to shake hands with her. I mean, I don't know. I mean, he shakes hands with others. So even if you say he's a germaphobe, I mean, he shakes hands with people. He was interested in my East German background and my relationship with Putin. He was clearly very fascinated by the Russian president, Merkel says, adding, in the years that followed, I had the impression that he was captivated by politicians with autocratic and dictatorial tendencies. So she's basically uttering here talking points. This is
Yeah,
almost
yeah,
like
yeah. Oh,
Democratic Party talking points.
she's part of the consensus. She wants,
Exactly. I
but
mean,
see, that's what she,
you really don't even need to write memoirs if that's
no,
all you're going to come up with.
no, she wants to be, I think obviously she maybe not accepts it herself, but I think she obviously is aware of the very critical assessment of her time in power.
Yeah,
Okay. And she's aware of it and she's trying to address it. And what she's trying to say is here, no, I'm with the team. I've always been with the
that's
team.
right.
Okay.
I think so too.
And it's a juxtaposition to Trump, and I suppose a juxtaposition when it comes to Putin. So she's this is called special pleading, everyone.
Right, right. Yeah. She asserts that Trump spent the rest of their first meeting criticizing her. He claimed that I had ruined Germany by taking in so many refugees in 2015 and 2016, accused us of spending too little on defense, and criticized us for unfair and trade practices. Well, he said all that in public. I mean, everything that you say here He's repeatedly criticized Germany for, taking in all those migrants in 2015. Obviously, he's always gone on about Germany not spending enough on defense. And yeah, he always saying about their unfair trade practices. He said this explicitly, that the euro is a German racket. It's a way of undercutting American exports. And then says, Merkel suggests that Trump saw everything through the eyes of a real estate mogul and did not appear to understand the intertwined global economy, complaining about German cars on New York City streets. We were talking about...
What do you expect from Deutsche Welle, really?
We were talking on two different levels, Trump on the emotional level, me on the factual level. Oh, factual level. When he did pay attention to my arguments, it was mostly just to turn them into new accusations, she says. Resolving the issues raised did not appear to be his goal. Well, I don't know. I mean, he was just unhappy. I mean, we talked before about that time he went to a NATO meeting and then he just was berating the Germany. It's a particular bone of contention with him that the Germany doesn't contribute much to NATO and is seeking advantage of the United States. And so this is the FT story. NATO right to heed Russian anger over Ukraine accession plans. So, Merkel wants to have it both ways. So that ignoring Vladimir's opposition to 2008 proposals would have risked playing with fire, writes Germany's ex-chancellor. So as Angela Merkel has defended her refusal to offer Ukraine a path to NATO membership in 2008, saying it would have been playing with fire to ignore Russia's opposition to Kiev joining the military alliance. Much of the criticism of Merkel has focused on the position she took on NATO summit in Bucharest on April 2008, where she and Sarkozy resisted efforts to offer Ukraine and Georgia a concrete timetable known as a membership action plan that would lead to accession. It's so strange that this is the FD, this is a criticism, that this is a legitimate criticism, when it's clear that the cause of this war has been the push to get Ukraine into NATO. I mean, Merkel at least understood that this is going to end badly, and they said, "Oh no, she should have basically agreed to it there and then." Anyway, it says Merkel said giving this membership action plan status to the two former Soviet republics would have been a promise of NATO membership that could scarcely be reversed. In the book, she says her main reason for blocking Ukraine's membership was the fact that Russia's Black Sea fleet was still stationed in Crimea, the peninsula that was controlled by Kiev until Moscow's annexation in 2014. It was unprecedented for a NATO candidate to be so entangled with Russian military structures. What's more, only a minority of the Ukrainian population backed NATO membership at the time. The country was profoundly split. Well, all of that was true, but then the question arises, well, why didn't you just simply say no? I mean, you could have, basically, why did you agree to this commitment? Yeah, you didn't agree to the membership action plan, but you basically made that commitment that Ukraine and Georgia will be members of NATO, and that put everything, set the seal for what happened subsequently, because then at every single NATO meeting after Bucharest, NATO repeated it. Ukraine will be a member of NATO, and that caused greater and greater distress in Moscow. So she could have said no, but she didn't.
She's trying to have it both ways.
Exactly, that's the point. She's trying to have it both ways. So she's saying, yeah, well, I thought it was a good idea, but, I didn't think Bush did this thing, but, but what about this and what about that? She's, it's a special pleading. Again, it angers both sides. And then in the case of Georgia, her memoir cites unresolved territorial disputes in the regions of South Ossetia and Abkhazia, which were reason enough to reject the country's membership bid. And again, so why didn't you reject it? Merkel says it would have been playing with fire to discuss membership action plan status for Ukraine and Georgia without analyzing the situation from the perspective of Putin, who had made it clear he wanted to restore Russia's great powers.
Well, now you say it, Angela. Now you do. Wow.
Right.
You know, in hindsight, I mean, again, this is a person desperately struggling to have a relevant legacy.
Right.
But Angela, your book isn't going to help.
No, I don't think so. And then she calls it illusory to think that setting Ukraine and Georgia on the path to NATO accession would have protected them from Putin's aggression, and that this status would have acted as a deterrent, or that Putin would have taken these developments lying down. The assumption that Putin would simply twiddle his thumbs in the period between the membership action plan decision and Ukraine's and Georgia's acquisition of NATO membership struck me as wishful thinking. Well, she's right. That
her modus operandi is wishful thinking. It's wishy-washy.
Well, exactly, but she is making the point that, which contrary to what so many people say, oh, if they offered NATO membership to Ukraine, then Ukraine would have been safe. Russia would not have attacked. No, I mean, if you give them NATO membership, it would still have absolutely guaranteed that Russia would not have accepted it. I mean, it doesn't matter that Ukraine is now in NATO. It's still Russia would not have accepted it, and you put a membership action plan, Russia would have then acted then. So the whole thing is just, and she's right to say that none of that would have been a guarantee of security for Ukraine. It was a bad idea, and she was right, it was a bad idea, but she was, cowardly then, and she's cowardly now.
Yep.
And then the Bucharest summit ended with a compromise. Ukraine and Georgia were not granted membership action plan status, but the alliance agreed that these countries will become members of NATO. Merkel says she was glad the alliance had not split as it had over the Iraq war. There had been no option but to compromise, even if this compromise, like any other, came at a price. For Georgia and Ukraine, being denied membership action plan status deflated their hopes, while for Putin, she writes the fact that NATO had made a general pledge of membership to the countries still amounted to a declaration of war.
That's right.
Exactly. So, I'm very glad we did this. And then she says, but in effect, it was a declaration of war. How can you then be glad that you did this?
Okay. I mean, if this were an interview, is Merkel interviewing Merkel? You know what I mean? It looks like right. she goes from this seat to this
right.
seat.
Right.
Boom, boom. Okay.
Right. That's right. And so this is Der Spiegel. So she did a long interview with Der Spiegel. We don't have to go through the whole of the interview because she did talked a lot about internal German politics. Yeah. And so here she talks. Der Spiegel, you are currently publishing your memoirs, which were finished before the US election. In them, you wish Kamala Harris success from the bottom of your heart. What did you think when you heard about Donald Trump's victory? Merkel, that the polls were wrong again. How many newspaper pages were filled with reports that Ms. Harris would narrowly win? And then you wake up at 6 a.m, look at your cell phone, and sadness. It was disappointment for me that Hillary Clinton didn't win in 2016. I would have wished for it to be different. What do you think of Trump? Merkel, if someone in politics doesn't allow for win-win situations, but only ever sees winners and losers, then that's a very difficult task for multilateralism. The interesting thing is just says that about the polls, it was German, I think we talked about this before, it was the German media that continued to assure the German public that Kamala Harris will win. If you were following American media, it was by no means clear that Harris would win. But I was really hoping that Hillary Clinton would win. Oh, that's so nice. And then she goes, Trump obviously thinks differently about this. How did it feel for you to be in the same room with him? Merkel, well, there was a typical scene. When I visited the White House in 2017, I tried to persuade him to shake hands for the photographers because, in my constructive way, I thought that maybe he hadn't realized that they wanted that kind of picture. But of course, his refusal was calculated.
Okay.
Yeah, I simply don't get that. Anyone
Okay,
I get the Labrador story.
whatever you say. Okay, okay.
Exactly. Spiegel, what does a German chancellor need to know in order to deal with Trump? Merkel, Trump was very curious and wanted to know the details in great detail, but only to probe them for his own benefit, to find arguments that would strengthen him and weaken others. The more people there were in the room, the greater his urge to be the winner. You can't chat with him. Every encounter is a competition, you or me. I don't think she liked him very much.
Yeah, you get that impression,
You
George.
get it? And in that famous photograph when he's sitting there with his arms folded and she's hovering over him. Um,
Well, I mean, obviously, the America firsters around him. I mean, Trump may have not known anything about Merkel at all and probably didn't even care. But my sense is, Mr. President, if you can be tough with her and show her who's boss, then you're saying it to all of Europe. It wasn't Angela Merkel as a person. I don't
no,
think
no, I
Trump
think he took
cares one
yeah,
way or another.
I
Okay.
think he took Angela Merkel as just simply embodiment of Germany. I mean, he
Yeah,
had a
yeah,
thing about Germany. He thought
yeah,
Germany was
yeah,
just taking America for a ride.
yeah, exactly. Sorry,
And
Angela, this wasn't personal.
no, no, not at all. And then Spiegel, in the book, you explain his political style and his beginnings as a real estate mogul. Each piece of land could only be sold once. If he didn't get it, someone else did. Do other heads of government have to adapt to this style? Absolutely not, says Michael. Otherwise, you won't be able to get anything done politically. Then Spiegel, is he a threat to world peace? Merkel, he's a challenge for the world and especially for multilateralism.
I
What?
mean, what is she talking about? Multilateralism. I mean, this is a feastum of Washington. Okay, I
Right.
mean,
Right.
I mean, was multilateralism considered when the Nord Stream pipelines were blown
Right.
up?
Right. Yeah.
But what is she talking about?
That's exactly. I always like
Ridiculous.
multilateralism. That's when she was imposing all these drastic diktats on other EU member states.
Yeah, where's the multilateralism
Yeah,
there?
yeah. What awaits us now is really not insignificant, simply because this president is backed by the strongest economy in the world, which, along with the dollar, also has a strong influence on the global monetary system. Compared to the impact of American sanctions, it would be ridiculous if we said we were no longer doing trade with American companies.
Well, isn't that an admission about how much of a brute the United States is?
Right.
Okay.
That's
That's really from one of the closest allies of the United
that's
States.
right. But you notice how, you know, she was chancellor at the time when Trump walked out on the JCPOA. And the Europeans had promised, okay, well, if that happens, we're going to make sure that Iran will be looked after. Iran will still be able to sell its oil. We have on this mechanism, but she never did anything about that.
I forgot about that. Oh yeah, I'd forgotten. You know why I forgot about it? Because these people never put their money where their
No,
mouth is.
that's right.
Okay?
That's right. No, no, we'll do it.
I
We'll take care
remember
of
that.
Iran.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
do.
yeah. Spiegel, has the challenge posed by Trump increased compared to 2016? Notice how obsessed they are about Trump. This is a kind of German liberal opinion. They're absolutely obsessed with Trump. They go back and back. They keep returning to this. Merkel, there is now this visible alliance between him and the large companies from Silicon Valley, which have enormous capital power.
Well, I mean, George, I mean, this is like stuff you read on the back of a cereal box. Okay, she doesn't really know much about American politics,
No,
obviously.
no, not at all. And but Elon Musk, because it's a kind of become this obsession among in Brussels, and they want to bring him down to size. So she suddenly brings up Elon Musk. I mean, what does she care, about Elon Musk? You are referring to the billionaire Elon Musk, whom Trump wants to make head of the agency. If a person like him owns 60% of all satellites orbiting in space, then that must be a huge concern for us, in addition to the political questions. Is Musk with his corporate empire and the reach of his social media platform X even a greater threat than Trump?
Oh, wow, this is like leading the witness.
That's right, exactly. Well, I wouldn't go that far, Merkel says, but politics must determine the social balance between the powerful and ordinary citizens. In the banking crisis, the euro crisis, and the global economic crisis, politics was the last resort that could set things right.
Wow, it's interesting. The banking crisis, the euro crisis, the global economic crisis. Where were you, Angela?
Exactly. Yeah, it set things right. Yeah, yeah. Um, and if this last resort is influenced too strongly by companies, whether through capital power and technological capabilities, then that is an unprecedented challenge for all of us. And again, if you go back to that time of this crisis, I mean, you basically, businesses were driven underground, or rather, driven out of existence. And again, where was Merkel in all of this? So
Yeah,
anyway,
it's interesting that she's kind of like she's describing her time in power as if she was observing it.
observe exactly. Yeah. Yeah, people. Obama was a kind of specialist in
Yeah,
doing that,
yeah.
Yeah, as if as if he's sort of a casual newspaper reader of that
Yeah, well,
time.
a real pity what happened to Libya. Yeah, yeah, it was a real pity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's the British kind of let I think they let the side down. It was the British. I was hoping the British would do more. Um, Spiegel, when it comes to your political legacy today, it is primarily your Russia and energy policies that are being criticized. Let's start with Vladimir Putin. Is it true that this ex-KGB officer reminded you of the Stasi officers you met in the GDR? In other, leading the witness. Merkel, when he spoke German, he usually spoke quietly. State security officers used to do that too. I noticed that. Okay, so if you speak quietly, you're like a state security officer. All right. Spiegel, you met Putin for the first time in 2000. Did he have a plan from the start, or did he gradually become radicalized?
Radicalized. Okay.
Radicalized. Merkel, I never had any illusions about him. He always had dictatorial tendencies, and his self righteousness often annoyed me. But I don't think that when he took office in 2000, he already planned to attack Ukraine one day. Uh, no, I don't think so either.
No, on the day of his birth, he decided to attack Ukraine.
I mean, 2000. Why would he? It was before the Orange Revolution, before the Bucharest Declaration. Why would he think that? This is a development that requires us in the West to ask ourselves whether we have always done everything right.
Well, both sidism again. Here we go.
um, Spiegel, did we? Merkel, I can't give a clear answer. But to be clear, there was and is no reason that would justify Putin's attack on Ukraine. But greater unity in the West would certainly have been better. We were not as strong as we could have been. So no side, she doesn't address any of the issues, but somehow wants to palm everything off on the hapless leaders. I mean, that came after her, but all the disastrous decisions were made by her.
Yep.
I mean, Scholz just inherited,
Yeah,
a
but I mean,
mess.
Angela, I mean, where were you in the greater unity in the West? You were the Chancellor of Germany.
Yeah,
Okay. Why didn't you say no at Bucharest?
exactly. Yeah,
Because again, my favorite theme here, she was a terrible leader,
it was
and terrible leaders engender terrible
right.
results.
Exactly. Um, and of course, the thing about her was she was always adopting different policies. So when she was first in favor of nuclear energy, and then she drastically changed the view, closing down all Germany's nuclear power plants. Or she said, "Oh, multiculturalism that never works," and then she invites in, a million migrants into Germany. I guess this strange person who, despite the fact that she kind of says one thing and then says something completely different the next day, the Germans kept voting for her. The Germans somehow thought they thought she was
Well,
a good leader.
hey, George, I haven't seen this. I mean, I'm seeing this for the first time. Is she asked who blew up the pipelines?
I no, she's not asked that. No, you never ask anyone, anything like any, it's that's too dangerous to bring that up. Um, and then so Spiegel says, so you yourself contributed to this. The Americans and some Eastern Europeans wanted to pave the way for Ukraine to join the defensive alliance at the NATO summit in Bucharest in 2008.
Again, languages go back, George, please. Language is so important here. Now, obviously this is a
This
translation,
is a translation, yeah.
but to pave the way for Ukraine to join the defense alliance.
Right.
Always defense. Why do you have to say it?
Yes.
It's NATO. Everybody knows what it is. Why do you have to do
Right.
that?
That's
See,
right.
that's this constantly propagandizing.
Exactly. Always, always. We are not a party to the conflict. Merkel. In Bucharest, the issue was the adoption of a NATO action plan for Ukraine and Georgia as candidate countries. I thought this was politics based on the principle of hope, which did not take into account what the period between the adoption of the action plan and the NATO membership would look like. That could be years. Putin would not have passively accepted this interim status as a deterrent, and then would it have been conceivable in 2008 that the NATO states would have intervened militarily? And if not, what consequences would that have had for Ukraine and NATO? I weighed that up. But okay, that's still perfectly sensible. But the question then is, Putin was there. Putin was in Bucharest. And he told you that this is a really bad idea. And yet you nonetheless went ahead and accepted that Ukraine will be a member of NATO. And that really just set everything into motion. That was that decision of Bucharest that you signed on to. So this stuff about the membership action plan, yeah, of course, George W. Bush put forward an absolutely insane idea, but he got something out of it. That's the important thing. That's what the Americans do. Yeah, they put that forward. They couldn't get everything, the membership action plan, but they got something. They got the NATO commitment to Ukraine.
More multilateralism, George.
That's it, multilateralism. Spiegel, and that's why you split NATO? The other way around, why is the American position set and anyone who has a different stance seen as a divisive force?
Good question.
She's self-righteous. Notice how she's getting quite self-righteous. I mean, she knows because she's getting attacked, by the German public that had once adored her are now attacking her. At the time, I agreed to a compromise. No to candidate status, but the assurance in principle that Ukraine and Georgia would one day join NATO.
From the Russian perspective, it's the same thing.
Exactly. And she kind of realizes that.
Yes, she does.
Yeah,
okay.
that's
why.
yeah. And Putin made that clear to her in Bucharest.
The two halves of her brain are arguing with her. You don't need this Spiegel there, okay?
Right. That's right. We were not alone in this position, by the way. France and many others shared our opinion. Spiegel, do you have the feeling that you are being made a scapegoat for this war because of your behavior at the NATO summit in 2008? That is not just a feeling, that's the way it is. So yeah, I'm being made a scapegoat.
Oh, no. She's not a scapegoat.
Of course not.
She is the problem. Okay,
Yeah.
Look at think of the definition of scapegoating. Is someone is blaming them for something they didn't do. Okay,
Right.
Angela, you did this. You don't need to be scapegoated.
And here's the difference. Had Gerhard Schroeder been there, I think Schroeder would have absolutely insisted, no, absolutely not. Ukraine cannot be a member of NATO. That's it. That's what Schroeder would. Schroeder had said no, absolutely no, to the Iraq adventure, as he called it. We're not going to support the Iraq adventure, and you're not going to use German territory to send troops and armaments for the invasion of Iraq. Schroeder made that clear. She never did any of that. She kind of she didn't fully endorse the Iraq adventure. On the other hand, she helped the Americans. She was ready to help the Americans replenish their forces in Iraq. So she always did this compromise that didn't please anyone, and was always going to end in disaster. So she could easily have been. She could easily have said no, and there would have been nothing that the Bush people would have done about it. But that's not her nature. Zelensky, for example, asked former French President Sarkozy and me to come to Bucha after the terrible massacre, clearly meaning that our attitude in Bucharest was responsible for the deaths in Bucha. Notice the whiny tone. Oh, he's going to blaming me for Bucha. Had nothing to do with me. I'm being scapegoated.
Well, it's really interesting. What happened with the whole Bucha theme,
All right.
George?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then she goes on, do you think that's unfair? Merkel, I admire Zelensky for his courage and determination during the almost 3 years of war, but I disagree with him on Bucharest. So, I have warned again and again, including Bucharest in 2008, Putin believes, and I don't agree with this, of course, that the collapse of the Soviet Union is the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century, which, of course, as we've said many times, he didn't actually say.
Historically illiterate, like the rest of them.
Exactly. Again, very ill-informed. I mean, you were the Chancellor of Germany, therefore, you should have had first-rate intelligence on your desk every morning. So you have no excuse to be ill-informed as to what Putin actually said. But no, she's very, she's trying to defend herself. No, you can't stop attacking me for 2008. Look at Putin. Putin was just a very unreasonable person. He was just meanie. He was a meanie. He concluded from this that Russia is an existential threat and has tried, wherever possible, to keep other former Soviet republics in check by stirring up conflict.
That's a weird translation.
I think there's a subject and a verb that got mangled up there. I think Zelensky. No, I think more or less that Putin considered that Russia was under an existential threat and has tried wherever possible to keep other former Soviet republics in check. Because I think they got the preposition wrong.
Yeah, well, somebody's going to cite this in the New York Times. Watch.
That's right. I was right with my warning because in 2008, Putin invaded Georgia. You were not right. You were not right.
You were not right. It was Saakashvili that invaded South Ossetia.
He invaded South Ossetia, and he invaded South Ossetia in response to what you did in Bucharest, because he knew, just as you said, that Georgia cannot join NATO until it sorts out the territorial disputes on its territory. So he went ahead and tried to resolve them once and for all. If you hadn't made that commitment in Bucharest, he wouldn't have invaded. I was right with my warning. Spiegel, didn't you actually grant Putin a veto over Ukraine's NATO membership? No, and that was is a killer argument. If you recognize so clearly back then what Putin is capable of, why didn't you take action? I did, says Merkel. In my view, it was imperative to try to resolve the conflicts with Russia peacefully.
I know what's coming up here. Go ahead.
At the same time, similar to the concept of the NATO double track decision, we also strengthened the principle of deterrence. At the NATO summit in Wales in 2014, the goal was set that all states should spend 2% of their GDP on defense. I admit the enthusiasm with which this was pushed forward was limited.
Hang on here. I did. In my view, it was imperative to try to resolve the conflicts with Russia peacefully. That's an empty statement.
It's a completely empty statement. But that's because, the Spiegel doesn't really want to probe anything further, which is you have to go, well, what about the coup?
Yeah, in 2014? This is just pinpricking her.
Exactly. It's pinpricks. That's right. But deliberately avoiding all of the real issues. And that's why, oh, well, didn't you, then if you knew Putin, what Putin was capable of, why didn't you do something? Meaning that you should somehow have mobilized NATO. I mean, no, I mean, what you've done is already, as she said, you've set in motion a declaration of war. Russia regarded that as a declaration of war by saying Ukraine will be a member of NATO. And then she goes, what slowed down your enthusiasm? In Germany, that really wasn't the CDU's fault. Nothing is ever her fault. Yep. My defense ministers held hundreds of talks with our coalition partner, the SPD, about the purchase of armed drones, the modernization of American nuclear warheads in Germany. I'll spare you the details. It didn't work. Why are there nuclear warheads in Germany?
You know what? Let's go into the details.
It's
an interview. Let's go into the minutiae.
Right. Okay? That's right. Why are there nuclear warheads in Germany? What are you planning on doing with those nuclear warheads in Germany? Or what are the Americans planning to do with those nuclear warheads in Germany? Spiegel, but you were the chancellor, the boss in the cabinet. Yes, of course, I was the boss, but a boss in a democracy has limited resources for good reason.
Well, that's such a dodge. Okay, let's go back to those American nuclear warheads in Germany. Let's circle back here.
Right.
Oh, I mean, you're a supplicant.
Right.
That's what you're saying to us. Here, and they bring up this bogus issue of it's a democracy.
That's right. Yeah.
Where's the democracy in the transatlantic world? Where's that democracy, George?
Well, that's right, and that's it. They have these nuclear warheads. I don't think Germans are particularly enthusiastic about nuclear warheads in Germany. Against whom are you planning to use these nuclear warheads? And these nuclear warheads would be used on our continent. So chances are they're going to be used somewhere here, and we're going to get some of the radiation blowback. And yet she so says, oh, well, we didn't modernize the nuclear warheads. How many years this is already? 40, 30 or some years since the end of the Cold War, and you still got nuclear warheads on Germany?
Yeah, and you have American nuclear warheads in Germany. My guess is they would be a target.
I would have thought. And then Spiegel, on the one hand, you never claim to have underestimated Putin. On the other hand, you did not effectively prevent his aggression, did not strengthen Germany's defense capability, did not supply weapons to Ukraine, and did not end its dependence on Russian gas. This is Der Spiegel. This is the way Der Spiegel's mentality. You didn't do enough against Putin. You didn't prevent his aggression. The book cannot resolve this fundamental contradiction. Merkel, even when I was writing it, I feared that the debate would not end there. Many important aspects are forgotten today. For example, that Ukraine and Poland were not fundamentally opposed to our import of Russian gas as long as it passed through their territory and they received transit fees.
What a weird little dodge. I mean, the question that Spiegel presented is very robust. It is ideologically motivated, loaded, but she's talking about Ukraine and Poland's objections or lack of objections about using their country as a transit. I mean, talk about small potatoes here.
Right, but that's she's basically trying to blame everything on everyone else. I mean that seems her mode. Her 700-page book must be a constant attempt to blame everyone for all of her shortcomings. And who cares? I mean, you are Germany. What do you care? Whether Ukraine and Poland want their transit fees. You say, hey, this was a good idea. It's a good idea to get cheap energy.
It was. And we know that. Empirically, we know that. Look what's happened to the German economy without cheap Russian gas.
Right. That's right.
It speaks for itself.
That's right. And then she goes on, Spiegel, why were you still willing to fill Putin's war chest with gas deliveries via Nord Stream 2 after the annexation of Crimea in 2014? Merkel, Russia started the war without any gas ever flowing through Nord Stream 2. You haven't. Again, she hasn't answered the question. I mean, I think there's a good answer to the question, which is, hey, this is, this has nothing to do with us. And she, in fact, earlier said Crimea was thoroughly integrated within the Russian military command. They were not going to let go of Crimea. But said, oh, well, without any gas ever flowing through Nord Stream 2. Today, other countries are filling Putin's war chest. Oh, somebody else is doing it. Look, others are doing it. That's what should have happened back then, too, if we had broken off. That's what would have happened back then if we had broken off all economic ties. That's always the argument of the whore throughout the ages. If I don't do it, someone else will. Do you still think it was right not to have stopped Nord Stream 2? And then Merkel, I stand by my decisions. I saw it as one of my tasks to get cheap gas for the German economy. We are now seeing the consequences of expensive energy prices for our country. I would not have had a political majority to end gas trade with Russia, and certainly not the support of the business community. I also thought Nord Stream 2 made sense politically. How could you maintain ties with someone like Putin, whom some historians call a revisionist in the new order after the Cold War, by trying to let him share in the prosperity? Okay, so you've done that. But then, if all of this is that's sensible, so you think it was worth sacrificing all that for Ukraine? What's Ukraine to you? I mean, your remit is the German economy.
Yeah. But you could ask the same question: was it all worth it to please the Americans?
Yes.
I mean, and she's getting it from both ends.
Right, exactly.
It didn't help Ukraine, and your country's in the shitter. Good job.
Yes, that's right. And then Spiegel, you were wrong there. Why did you find it so difficult to look back and say this pipeline was a mistake? So you were wrong there. But the wrong there, they're saying it because Merkel herself said that she was wrong. What she said, no, I think that because I used all my strength to prevent the situation that has now arisen. In 2015, during the negotiations in Minsk, I tried to stop the Russian advance in eastern Ukraine. I'm kind of getting a headache from trying to follow her convoluted arguments. It's just mind-numbing. I tried to stop her. So
this is kind of this interview is beginning to remind me of Robert Mueller presenting his report to Congress. I mean, Angela, did you read your own book?
That's right. Yeah.
Mueller, did you read your own report?
Right. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, everybody, for me, this is really kind of a letdown for me. I thought, that was the great Iron Lady of continental Europe that ran the shop for 20 years. I guess now we know why there are so many problems. This lady.
That's right. So 2015, I tried to stop the Russian advance in eastern Ukraine. At the time.
What do you mean by that?
I don't, exactly. At the time, it did not seem sensible to me to say that economically we are cutting off all ties that are also important to Putin. By the way, I was not an outsider in Europe. It was hard enough to keep convincing our EU partners that we should at least impose a few sanctions. Again, she's constantly trying to blame everybody else. Oh, well, I couldn't keep them. Everybody wanted to continue to do business with Russia.
Those damn people in Luxembourg just wouldn't go along. Okay.
Yes, exactly. Poor little Germany, and constantly, these tiny countries are telling Germany what to do. But ultimately she does say, oh well, she did say it was a mistake with the Nord Stream 2. I said, well, yeah, but I was trying to do something in Minsk. What were you trying to do? Oh, I was trying to stop the Russian advance. That's not what the Minsk was about.
No, it wasn't at all.
Then Spiegel,
and she was there.
Yeah. Spiegel, why were you against supporting Ukraine with arms deliveries after the annexation of Crimea? Merkel, there was a big argument in Ukraine about whether to try militarily to expel Russian troops from eastern Ukraine. I thought that would have no chance of success. On the other hand, I understood that we could not leave the Ukrainians defenseless. It was a dilemma. In the end, we did not supply any weapons from Germany, but we supported all of NATO's efforts. Oh, this is a classic. We didn't supply any German arms, but we supported NATO's efforts.
Yeah, it's that's like saying, I mean, just that sentence alone, it sounds like Germany is not in NATO. We supported NATO.
Exactly. We're not the most powerful country in Europe. Yeah. And then the book says that diplomatic initiatives must be launched at the right moment. When that happens, cannot be decided. When that happens, cannot be decided by Ukraine alone. Does that mean, if necessary, a peace against Kiev's will? Merkel, no, that is exactly what I'm not saying. If we support Ukraine out of common interest, we must also take all steps to end the war together. And that's kind of pretty much the end of that. A very unimpressive performance.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like her time in power. If you're going to give it a mark, you're going to grade it. It's kind of a C plus.
I think
Okay,
so.
you pass. Okay, you pass. Okay.
That's right. But I think anyone examining it is filled with so many contradictions and so many attempts to deflect, blame everybody else. And we went through stories, newspaper stories. We went through this interview, and we're still in the end. I'm trying to figure out what is she saying. What is her argument? And you can't do it. You can't
Not my fault.
summarize what is her argument.
No,
Yeah, it's not my
not
fault.
my fault.
Exactly.
Not
What
my
you
fault.
weren't me.
Well, I mean, this is an ongoing motif for George and I, is that, this is what you get with mediocre leadership.
Right. Right.
Okay. I mean, and Spiegel is not really hardball. Okay.
No.
I mean, and you can't acquit yourself from
Right.
okay, it wasn't a softball one. I'll give it that. But I mean, there wasn't much oomph into this.
No. But that's the thing, that in Germany, the mainstream media, or the heavy German heavyweights, they all come from a certain perspective, which is their perspective. Hey, why did you do so little for Ukraine? Why were you so craven towards Putin? Why didn't you do more? And that's ultimately, so she has to defend herself against the opinion of the German bien-pensant. That this is how they see her, and she needs to curry favor with them.
But if she had any guts at all, I mean, considering how she fumbled all the way through the interview when it comes to Ukraine, you know what she should have said? What's Ukraine to me?
Right.
What is Ukraine to Germany? It's those crazies in America and in Brussels. They're the ones that are driving the show. What's it to me? And history would acquit her well.
Of course it would. Of course it would. And she could have indeed said, and since Germans like to bring up their history, it says, yeah, we have a particular history in Ukraine and with Russia, and we just don't want to go there. And the German people definitely don't want to go there. And that's
people like well-paying jobs.
Right.
Creating manufactured goods that the world wants. Okay.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. We had these two world wars. They were within 30 years of each other. We were heavily involved in both wars, in Ukraine and in Russia. And basically, the German people do not want to repeat that experience. It was a very painful experience all around. And so that's why, the most sensible policy for us was not to aggravate things there. We're basically don't make it as a kind of West in Russia and Ukraine, the West ganging up on Russia. Because that always ends badly. When the Russians see that the West is ganging up on them, that's going to end badly. She could easily have said that. But if she had, the bien-pensants in Germany would have abandoned her.
Yeah. But again, we have excuses. We don't have reasoned answers for decisions that were made. We just get excuses, or splitting the baby, or it's the Poles and the Ukrainians that did. you know, that is a template of the type of leadership and thinking we have all through the
Yep.
West right now.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah,
No
that
wonder
that
it ends badly all the time.
yeah, yeah. I remember when she won the election and she defeated Schroeder, and I was very disappointed at the time because I liked Schroeder because he had stood so firmly against the whole Iraq war, and it seemed like a breath of fresh air. At least you're getting a different, a new kind of German leadership that is willing to stand up to the Americans, and then boom, once he was gone and she took over, we were back to that mediocre, that basically Germans always go along with the Americans. They make cough and complain about this or that, but basically the Americans will always rely on them.
And on any issue of any import, she was on the wrong side.
She was on the wrong side.
The wrong decision consistently.
No, and notice also, how, oh, well, Hillary Clinton, I support Hillary, oh, Kamala Harris, yes. Obama, whom she adored, Obama listened in on her phone conversations. I mean, you complain about Trump, and then you found out that the Americans were listening in on your personal phone conversations, and that you don't have any problems with, but you have a whole problem about, oh, he didn't want to shake my hand, and then I had to force him to shake my hand or whatever. But he's listening into your personal calls.
Well, maybe that's what Trump was thinking. Is that what's so interesting about you? Obama was eavesdropping on you. Why are you interesting? Okay, maybe that's why he asked the question. This, a frumpy German Frau, it just,
Right.
what's you so interesting?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting. I mean, her whole rise has been kind of a mystery to me. I never could see what. I mean, Helmut Kohl kind of pushed her. I guess he wanted an East German to head
And a
the
woman,
CDU.
maybe. East German woman, maybe that's what it
Yeah,
was.
that's right. But somehow she survived at the top, and I guess that's a sort of sort of mediocrity. She didn't intimidate anyone. She didn't threaten anyone, and so people were quite happy to have
I
her
mean,
there.
you keep somebody like that around because if things are incrementally getting better, okay, then we know why change horses
Right.
midstream. But
Right.
Ingela, during your time, what you inherited
Right.
an economic powerhouse.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, you
Right.
inherited a country that remarkably, in the scheme of history, redeemed itself on the
Right.
continent. Okay,
Right.
and by the time you left, everything was in tatters.
Right.
I mean, it was a dumpster fire by the time she left.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, she's very Gorbachevian in a way.
Is Gorbachevian. So, and of course, Schultz inherited all that. I mean, we don't have much time for Schultz, but at the same time, he was dealt a very bad hand, and they didn't play that hand well. And Schultz will obviously be disappeared in
Yeah.
no uncertain terms very shortly.
Well,
But he inherited, a real problem case.
yeah, well, Merkel will be remembered by her. I mean, she was a serial mistake maker. Okay, I mean, very much like Joe Biden in foreign policy, always on the wrong side.
Right.
Sergeant Schultz, who was that? Who's that, by the way?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, he's going to be a Liz Truss figure.
Yes. 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 Yeah.
You heard Annalena Baerbock got divorced. I don't know.
Yes, I saw that. I saw that. Oh, I was surprised why that was a news item at all. I mean,
Me too. Well, I
yeah.
saw a picture of the guy. I won't say anything, but okay, he got divorced. Okay. He worked at the post office. I mean, high up.
High up in the
Okay.
post office, yeah. But how does that explain the divorce that he worked at the post office?
Just take a look at the picture.
Oh, okay. All right.
No, I don't want to be cruel.
All right. Yeah, but I think, but
You just look at the picture and you think, well, was social climbing involved here? I don't know.
Yeah, but from what I read, they will continue to live in the same house.
It's a German thing.
Yeah. I mean, it makes economic sense. I mean, I guess. I mean,
The
you don't have
German
to spend money on a new household, so
whatever.
yeah. But at least it's a news flash, So we didn't think that it was
Well,
worth.
I think the news is that she's available. Okay.
She's what?
available.
Oh, that's boy.
Maybe that was the message. I'm available. Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
Well,
we've had
well,
so much fun with the Greens, but we'll see what
yes,
the
yes, exactly. So, but
and I
this
mean,
is a very, maybe when we get our hands on a copy of the book, we'll find that there's something a little more interesting here. But judging by the excerpts that have been published and judging by the tone of the interview, she really doesn't have anything of any
well, I mean,
substance
George,
to say.
why didn't Spiegel ask her about her comments about she never believed in the Minsk process? I mean, where's the integrity there? Where's the
That's
journal?
very good. That's a very good point. Yeah. But that's the point, because the Spiegel and doubtless the other outlets that she'll do interviews for decide, they only have one set of questions. Hey, why didn't you do more for Ukraine? Why didn't you hit Putin harder earlier? That's all. That's all. But they won't ask her that question about, yes, we always saw Minsk as just simply a means to get Ukraine to rearm, and all the rest. In other words, you were basically lying to the Russians as to what you were trying to achieve at Minsk. And again, as you asked earlier, who do you think blew up Nord Stream? Schroeder was fairly unambiguous as to who he thought blew up Nord Stream. But again, the only thing they're interested in, why did you sign on to Nord Stream? But the question, well, who blew this up? Who created this greatest industrial terrorism in, I think, throughout history? Who's behind this? Don't you think Germans
And
should?
the third thing is how terrible Donald Trump is.
Yes, yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah, yeah.
That's the people we're dealing with here. So, Angela, if somebody sends it to me PDF for free, I'll give it a look. But I'm not buying your book.
No,
Sorry.
no. 700.
All right, everybody. This is our Sunday wrap. We're done. Reasonable time this time. This is a Gaggle with Peter George. We're on local, so please go to thegaggle.locals.com. Tomorrow is our live stream, 10 o'clock Eastern time. I'm making a dispensation for everybody. I will show up an hour later than usual. Boys, I'm signing off, okay?
Yes.
George has his solo on Tuesday.
Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern time. And now think about it, these are the people who believe that they are doing all the heavy lifting. So, hey, we're doing all the work and we're not getting compensated. And they're getting very angry, as people often do. Sorry, there's no paycheck for you. So they're very upset. And then in order to calm them down a little bit, if you have a few bob in your pocket, whip them out, dunk them in the tip jar, so that way they'll feel that their hard work is being rewarded. Otherwise, they're just going to take out their rage on me. So we're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve the technology, and above all, we can keep these savages under control. So remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye-bye.